welcome everybody. Today we're going to build out, let me get this thing here. Today we're going to build out Active Directory, and I'm going to turn off this music. Hey Kevin, how are you? Actually, I might leave the music in the background for my own requirements here. Okay, perfect. So, before getting started today, I grabbed a couple of the templates that we actually used for the groundhog tweet. Yeah, that was on at lunch today, and I'm like, I'm going to record this because it's actually a really funny movie. So I thought maybe I would watch it, and then I'd probably watch it again. Yeah, that's great. Oh, do you live 30 minutes from there? Yeah. How was it this year? I would suspect maybe a little less crazy than normal. I think here we have the equivalent is Wyerton Willie, and they didn't even do anything this year. They had like a little like pre-recorded video, and it wasn't even Wyerton Willie. It was like a hat or something like that they used. Who knows? So why don't we look at this first template? So a lot of the folks that we work with run Windows workloads. So one of the pain points with Windows workloads, not pain points, but a requirement for a lot of them, is the fact that you need directory services, right? For, login might be required to support the service. There's any number of reasons why you might want that. So we're going to build that out today. It's actually really quite easy, but I'm going to show you a couple other things that you might want to turn on as well. Hey, Payman, welcome, man. How are you? It's good to see you. Let's see. It was virtual this year, but 50% capacity for restaurants serving Punxsy Phil pancakes. Okay, so I have to know what is what is a Punxsy Phil pancake? Do I want to know? I kind of want to know, but I don't know if I really truly want to or not. So yeah, we basically have the template, and this is one of the things that I like about infrastructure as code, and in particular CloudFormation, is that once we have these templates, I knew it was the short form for Puxatansi, or however you say that, but what is the flavor of pancakes? That's what I want to know. And pancakes are like one of my favorite things. I could eat pancakes. I could live on pancakes and pizza. I know it would not be very good for me, but I would be perfectly happy. All right, so yeah, I was mentioning that we've got this existing template, so let's just use it, right? There's no sense in reinventing the wheel here. So we're going to leave all the parameters like we had before. So we've got our CIDR ranges for the VPC, for the subnets. We've got our string here, which I think we'll just call demo AD this time. We'll use that as our kind of application string for tagging. The rest of this can stay the same. We'll leave it as development. And we've got all of this set up already. Internet gateways, everything. So I think what we'll do, we'll just deploy this, because the directory service goes within a VPC. So it's a building block. And I also borrowed part of our previous deployment script in GitLab. So we're going to use that as well. Okay. Super sweet and syrupy. The shape of a groundhog. The most expensive pancake ever. Yeah. I could probably be convinced to eat a few of them. I probably wouldn't say no. So let's just take this, and we'll get rid of the comments, and we'll just say VPC deploy. And we'll say deploy VPC, which I'm going to go back up here. Remember, I always forget this, so I'm going to do it now. Okay, our different stages. We'll call this VPC just like we did before. And I don't think we need any of this. Okay. The profile, remember the profile is how we're going to have, in this case, the GitLab runner get temporary access to our account. So we want it to go into our demo account. So this is the profile that's already set up and ready to go. And then we need to change this to VPC. And no overrides are required. Okay. So this is a really easy start. And we'll just commit all this. Actually, they just changed this. So this is an easier way to do it. Let me make sure this is sized properly. Feels like it's kind of off. Okay, there we go. So we'll just call this first load. Make sure we grab everything and push it all. Now, to be honest, I think I cleaned up the old account that we did last week or the week before, I think. But I don't know, to be honest. We may end up running into something in there. So we'll see here in a second. Here's our project, and yeah, imagine that. What did I do wrong? Oh, look, yeah, there's a perfect indication that we've got something left over. I didn't do a good job of cleaning up last time. So let's do, I got to go over to the demo account. Let's have a look at CloudFormation. Oh, look, I started it. Okay, let's clean all this up. And let's see why this failed. Has dependencies. Well, we'll just say leave the VPC for now, and then we'll go back and figure out why that didn't delete. I'll leave the KMS key. I don't think we're going to use KMS for this today, but we'll leave it. Might as well for next time. All right, so the VPC is gone, but I said just to leave the resources. So we're going to go have a look and see if we can just delete it manually now. Find sometimes if you're trying to delete something and it doesn't work, keeping the resource and then going into the actual the console and just having a look at this is usually easier. This will tell us if there's something left over. So whatever it was. Okay. Oh, hey, Rogue Tricks. Sorry, I've got small screen over here. I can't see it. Welcome, Rogue Tricks. Yeah, you're right. I think last time I saw a presentation or something, it was 165 services, I think it was. So you gotta, I think one of the biggest two of the biggest challenges are knowing what is the most appropriate service for what it is you're trying to do, but then also understanding the pricing models, because a lot of the services too will have multiple pricing options, or not options, but they'll have multiple inputs into the actual cost of a service. So yeah, kind of navigating through. I do like the fact that there are so many services, because we're able to kind of pick and choose. Analogy that I like is it's kind of like a bucket of Lego, right? And we can piece it together in all sorts of different ways to build things. But yeah, it's overwhelming. Definitely overwhelming. All right, so let's go back to our deploy script now that we cleaned that up, and we'll just rerun it. Yeah, just on the main branch, run that. I didn't change that name, so let's change that. Not like that. There we go. So this time, I think it should be fine. There we go. And now if we go back over here, back into CloudFormation, there's our new development VPC. And like we've seen before, right, we can go in here, we can see all the resources that are getting deployed. So this is a multi-AZ VPC, just like we've seen through the last series that we did. And we'll deploy that. I actually think as I was getting ready for this today, I kind of thought, you know, I think we're done on the web workload, but as I was kind of setting up, there's actually one service that we didn't talk about. It's really common, in web-based workloads like that is some sort of content distribution, right? Like a CDN. So I think what we'll do is we'll do this one tonight because it's kind of just one-off. I wasn't quite sure what to do and forgetting about CloudFront. So I think next week we'll come back and talk a little bit more about the web workload, and we'll do one more walkthrough on that. And at that point, we'll have the full stack with CloudFront and everything. But I don't know where my brain was today. I completely forgot. So we'll do this one tonight, and then we'll loop back. Okay. So while this is running, let's go over here, and we'll look at Active Directory. And for today, we're going to deploy a full implementation of Microsoft Active Directory. It's going to actually stand up 2 EC2 instances that we won't have to manage. It'll have both of those instances will have AD up and running, and then we can manage it like any other AD solution. It does replication for us between a couple nodes, right? Basically the 2 DCs that it's going to set up. It's also going to do backups for us. It also has integration with other AWS services. So we use this all the time. We were working on a directory solution for a customer just last week, and this is essentially what we did for them. So we'll walk through building this out. Okay. There are a couple things to keep in mind with the directory service. There are multiple options. So if I just do this, directory services, and there we go here maybe. This is a really great cheat sheet. I use this all the time. Which one to use? So we've got the one we're going to work on today is the directory service for Microsoft Active Directory. You can deploy that both in standard or enterprise edition. We're just going to do standard, okay? You can use what's called an AD connector, and this is another version of the directory service, and we use it all the time. What this allows us to do is connect to an existing directory service. A directory service could be in AWS. It could also be outside of AWS. Okay. I don't know if it's the right way to think about it, but the way that I always think about it, it's almost like a proxy. Okay, so I'm hearing my my Nest fire alarms blink at me. We may have to take an unscheduled break to find out why those are beeping in the hall. It's a little odd. But yeah, let's just see how this goes. Link in chat, yeah, sure, absolutely. It's a good suggestion. Oh, how am I going to do this? 2 computers. Hang on. The best part about that is I didn't realize I was on 2 computers until I tried to drag the mouse across to the other computer. Yeah, it's been one of those days. There you go. That is the page that I'm looking at here. Okay. So you've got the full directory solution that we're going to use today, standard, enterprise. You've got the AD connector, which in my brain, I kind of think a bit about like a bit of a proxy solution. Yeah, no problem, Kevin, where I'm able to connect to some existing service already, right? To like a directory service that's running on-prem, or that I could be running in my AWS environment if I wanted. Okay. Oh, no stupid questions. So Rogue, a VPC, sorry, stands for a virtual private cloud. And what that is it's basically, think of it as a completely, it's a network segment within Amazon that we can control. So we set up all of the subnets, all of the routing, all of that. Okay. And a lot of times when we're talking about solutions, a VPC is kind of a standard building block. You're always going to start with that virtual private cloud, and then within that network we start placing services. Okay, so that's essentially what it is. And when I go back to the CloudFormation page, I'll actually walk you through it so you can kind of get an idea of what we've built. Okay. We've also got a simple AD. So this is a great explanation for it. Low scale, low cost directory. Still fully compatible with Active Directory, but might be a specific use case. But you can continue to scroll through this list. We've also got Cognito. We might do a Cognito thing, a Cognito demo, maybe in a couple weeks, because Cognito is really good if you're building applications, either mobile applications or web-based applications. It's a great way to offload the creation and maintenance of user authentication and user authorization services. Okay. We won't really get into that in a lot of detail, but that's what that's for. And then if you continue to scroll down here, you can see I can kind of jump through these different tabs, and it gives you a great kind of when would you use Cognito? When would you use a connector? Okay. Payment, is there an advantage or disadvantage of using an AD connector over an actual managed enterprise and or an EC2 instance? So the way that we generally approach this is wherever we could use a fully serverless solution, we would do that first. Okay, that's kind of anytime we're building out something for a customer, we're going to start with a serverless solution first. The reason that we do that is they tend to be really cost effective, and also we're able to shift almost all of the heavy lifting to Amazon, right? We get to offload a lot of work. So we would start there. And then we would go to a managed service like what we're looking at today, right? The Microsoft Active Directory solution running on Amazon is an example of a managed service. And I would really only ever stand something up on an EC2 instance if there was some really specific reason why I couldn't use a managed service. So like in this case, you would have a hard time convincing me to use an EC2 instance, because the reason that you don't want to use an EC2 instance is that you're paying for the EC2 instance, right? When it's running, you're paying for it. But also remember that you're now responsible for the operating system and up. So you have to patch and maintain the operating system. You have to install, in this case, Active Directory. You have to maintain Active Directory. And now we would need that second EC2 instance, and we would need to maintain replication, do all the backups. So replication, backups, all that stuff is done for us as part of the managed service. Okay, so I would say the advantage of using the managed AD implementation over the unmanaged AD implementation is just shifting of responsibility to Amazon. Now, why would you use a connector over, say, a full AD deployment? This is your answer right here. So when to use? You would want to use a connector when you have to, or you want to use your existing on-prem directory with compatible AWS services. Okay, and you can go up here and you can see the different services that are compatible with the AD connector. Okay. And if I go over here and look at this, best choice if you need an actual directory with all the regular features to support your applications or Windows workloads, including the relational database service from SQL. So the secret here is really to use exactly this tab, and you can see all of the additional functionality that is supported with the full Active Directory deployment. It gives you better, tighter integration, right? Okay. So this is a really good page. And like I said, we talk about serverless a lot, but with the types of customers that we're dealing with, a lot of them have legacy solutions, and we're going to be running Windows workloads for some time period, maybe forever, right? So this is a tool that we use all the time. So let's have a look at actually, let's go back here. So Rogue, let's have a look at this. This should be done by now unless I messed something up. Okay, so we have our VPC, our virtual private cloud. So if we go over to the virtual private cloud service, the VPC service, what you'll see, Rogue, is this is the VPC that we just created. There's its network segment. Okay, so it's excessively large for the demos that we do here, but we've got 65,000 IP addresses. Is it 65,000? Yeah, I think it's 65,000. No, it's a /16, maybe 32 and change. I always get them mixed up, but we got a /16 network. And then within that network, let me filter this. We've got subnets. And what you'll often find is two general types of subnets, a public subnet and a private subnet. The only difference between these is the default route. So I'm on a public subnet here. If I look at the route table, its default route, which is the 0 route, points to the internet gateway. Okay, so that makes it a public subnet. In theory, resources that you put within a public subnet, if they're set up in a certain way, would have direct access to the public internet. Versus a private subnet, you'll notice its default route, its 0 route, is a NAT gateway. So essentially what this means is a resource that's deployed within a private subnet still has access to the internet, but it gets its traffic routed through this NAT gateway. It doesn't have direct access, okay? And then within here, we've got route tables. And we've got route tables created for each of the subnets. And these are essentially how we're going to route traffic within the VPC itself, the virtual private cloud, and then outside of that VPC, whether it's going to the public internet or whether it's coming back on-prem through like a VPN connection or something like that, okay? So Rogue, that's essentially what a VPC is, a virtual private cloud. Just think of it as a network segment within Amazon that you have complete control over, okay? So now that this is running, what we're going to do is we're going to build out the AD template, and we're going to deploy, if I go back here and look at this view, sorry, the filter keeps coming off. If we look at this, we are going to deploy one Active Directory controller. Actually, sorry, we're going to deploy 2 directory controllers, one in each of these private subnets. And then Payman, to your question about kind of the difference between, or the advantage here is that now we've got those 2 nodes. Amazon's going to set up the replication. Amazon's going to take care of the failover if one of them were to, for whatever reason, the underlying host were to fail. They would detect that failure and fall over to the other one and then replace the failed node for you. Very similar to like how RDS works, okay? At least from a failover perspective. Right? And you're going to see here that there's really not a heck of a lot that we need to do here. Pretty basic stuff. So let's build out this template. Okay, and if you've seen me do this before, you can probably guess what I'm going to call the template. Okay, not very creative. We'll close that, and we'll just grab this description. Okay. And this is going to be deploy AD within our demo VPC. We'll start with our placeholder for the parameters, the inputs that we want to pass in to this template. We may not actually have a lot here, and we're just going to define our logical resource as AD0, and then we're going to say, I already forget what it's called, Directory Service. I'm just going to cut and paste. Okay. All right, so what does it ask us for? The first thing is an alias. So we can create an alias for our directory and assign that alias to the directory. Here, let's use construct access URLs. We'll leave the default, okay? Actually, look at this. By default, Amazon or CloudFormation does not create an alias. Yeah, I like this. So this operation should only be used when absolutely necessary. Off the top of my head, I don't know. I can't think of a time that we've changed that alias. So I think it's best, looking at that documentation there, we'll just leave it as is. We are going to set the edition, okay? Enterprise is the default. I don't want an enterprise edition of this, so we'll set it to edition is standard. Okay. SSO, we're not going to worry about. So you can integrate this with single sign-on. That might be another good demo that we could do later on. The challenge with SSO is, the last time I looked, single sign-on, Amazon single sign-on, Amazon SSO needs to be enabled in the management account. And I don't really want to mess around with our management account, because our management account, well, manages, I think, about close to 24 AWS accounts that we're using for different projects and stuff. So that one might be a little tougher to simulate, but what this allows us to do is enable SSO in that directory solution. As like we always do here, the fully qualified domain name. let's set that up. We'll get really, actually, let's do it this way. Okay. And then if you remember, we use these functions all the time, right? So an intrinsic function, in this case, a reference, and we're going to refer back to whatever we pass in for the domain name. And we'll set that as the name, there we go, for our solution. We need a password. Okay. So we're going to do something a little different here. I don't really want to put the password in the script. So I don't know if we've talked about this one before, but Amazon has a service called Parameter Store. Actually, Parameter Store is a feature of a service called Systems Manager. So what we're going to do is we're going to go over here, and I'm just going to create this by hand. Okay. And we'll just call this AD demo password. And one of the things that's good about Parameter Store is we can store what they call a secure string. So in this case, we are going to use KMS, which is a key management service, to encrypt this value at rest. And we've got a bunch of keys because we're always creating and deleting keys. We're going to use the demo key that we've used before. And then I'll just give this my password, my top secret 80 password, right? And we'll create that. What we're going to do in our template is we're going to refer to this. So this allows us to avoid hard coding a password in our CloudFormation template. It's essentially what we're going to do. Now, normally I would probably script this, but in this environment, it's easy just to quickly do it. I do have to look up how do we refer to that. It's got a specific syntax that we have to use, and I always forget it. I don't know if it's in the CloudFormation documentation or not. Let's see if they've got an example. No. I'll see here, SSM parameter types. No, that's not what I'm after either. Oh, maybe this is it. It is not. Okay. The search will continue. Oh, this is what I'm after right here. There we go. Okay. So remember, in SSM, there's a couple different things we can store. We can store just plain text. Okay, if you don't care about it being encrypted or not, and we've got secure, which is where we encrypt that value with the key management service, and we can also use something called Secrets Manager, different service. Okay, we're going to use this, and this is the string that we're after. So I'm just going to cut and paste this. Okay, and we'll go back over here, and we can just plunk it in there. Now we need the name of the parameter, which I already forget. AD-demo-password. Okay, and then, whoops, we need the version. Because if I was to change that, we actually, it's versioned. So I want to refer here, in this case, to the first version of that password. Okay. I just want to see if they give us anything else here. Yeah, see, they've got single quotes around that. Yeah, let's put single quotes around it. I don't really know if it's required, to be honest, but let's do it just in case. The short name, and now this is important because this is how we're going to tie the directory service to the VPC. So we need VPC settings, and it is, let's just go up here. Okay. So subnet IDs, And what we're going to do here is we are going to actually let's use fn import for this. Just give me a second to pull up a quick example. Let's forget the structure of this. That's what we want. Okay. I have no idea what this is called, so we're just going to do that twice, and we'll grab the references here in a second. What this import value function allows us to do is take an output value from another template and import it into this template. And what we need here is a couple changes to this. Okay, so what we're going to say is VPC stack, and we're going to do the same thing. We're going to pass the value for that VPC stack in dynamically. Okay, so we're going to do that in the CI script itself. And now I need the name of the export from this VPC stack template, and we know that's in here. So if we scroll to the bottom, what we're looking for is these references. Okay, so let me just grab this whole thing. And what we're doing here is we're telling CloudFormation the two subnets that we want the directory services to be placed in, two private subnets. Okay. And what's the other piece that we need here? Oh, the VPC ID itself. And I think that's just a string. Okay. And we'll do exactly the same thing. We're going to import the VPC ID from the other stack. And normally I just do it like that, but we'll check. Yeah, so right here, oh, look, I've got, whoops, I did it differently, of course. VPC ID. Okay. So that is the directory service. What we need to do now is update our CI script to deploy it. Okay. Put in our new template. We just called that AD. And we do want this to go after the VPC. And we'll just grab this. Now we do have some parameters to override here. Remember those two values? So parameter overrides. We had VPC ID. Oh, actually, sorry, no, we had VPC stack. And then we had another value and I don't remember. Oh, domain name. Did I have it? Did I do it like that? Yeah. Okay, so VPC stack, and then I think we just called that VPC development. We'll check. And for our domain name, this can be whatever we want. We'll just call it AWS local. Okay, so that becomes the domain that we're going to create within our AD environment. So let's just check that to make sure I've got the right thing. Actually, I can tell it is because that's what we've called up here. So I think we're good. VPC development. Actually, I could make this dynamic, couldn't by just doing the same thing. Right? So if I've got everything done correctly here, we should be able to deploy this. Let's go here. Push that, and we'll see how the pipeline goes here. All right, so it validated. That's a good sign. And here's our template. And like we've done in the past, we can drill down into the change set and see what's going to happen. Okay, so the inputs that are passing in, there's our domain name. there's our VPC stack. There's the actual template, and then it'll show us what it's going to do. Pretty basic template to deploy this. So we'll execute that. Look at what did I do? Fails to satisfy. Oh, I need a better password than my top secret password. This is actually good. So what we'll do, we'll delete this, and we will make a top secret password. Okay, so I got a couple characters in there now. Let's make sure we get that too. It's my my random password generator is just to mash the keyboard. Now this is going to make some changes though. So if we go back over here and we go into Systems Manager and we edit this, so I can just click Edit and change the value. Okay, hopefully that is going to work this time. Let's make sure there's no space at the beginning of that. Save it, and you'll notice version 2. Okay, and this gets me when we're building templates. So what I have to do is I have to go back over here, and remember in our AD template when we referred to it, I need to change the version. I want to use version 2 of this secret. Okay. And try this again. There we go. Let's see what it does this time. Feels like it's lasting here a little better than last time. Yeah, that's a good sign. Okay. Yeah, I know. Mine too. When we're not writing CloudFormation templates, I'm basically hitting the refresh button here, trying to. I figure in my brain if I hit the refresh button, it will go faster. Doesn't ever seem to work, but I still do it. So while this is waiting, or while this is creating, let's. Oh, it doesn't even give us a lot of info. Okay, we'll have to wait for that to come to life. Okay. In the meantime, what we're going to do is we're going to just create a temporary Windows Bastion host, because what I want to show you next is it's great that you have this directory service, but how are you going to manage it? In my case, what we're going to do is we're going to manage it through a Windows instance. Okay, so why don't we stand up a temporary instance that we can use, and we can do that while we're waiting. And we're not going to do this in CloudFormation because I won't normally have this running all the time. So it's just meant to come to life to demonstrate something and then go away. So we're going to deploy 2016. We'll make it a T3A medium. Okay. We want to make sure it gets deployed in a demo environment. And in this case, I'm going to use it as basically a Bastion host. So I do want it to go into the public subnet so that I can RDP to it from my laptop. Actually, you know what? We're talking about CloudFormation. Let's do this with CloudFormation. Okay. So if we think about what we need to create here, we need a really simple Windows machine, and then we need a security group for that Windows machine. And in this case, the security group, what I'm going to do is I'm going to lock it down so that only my IP address has the ability to RDP into the machine. Okay, so let's set up our security group first. Let's do this. Oops. Grab that and go back over here. I think I can just do that. So let's give it our description. I will let CloudFormation set the group name. And remember, with security groups, by default, they block all inbound traffic and allow all outbound traffic. What we want to do is we want to modify the ingress rules on that security group. Okay, so security group ingress, and let's see what we got to put in here. The CIDR IP, in this case, that'll be my IP address, so let's look that up. Okay. So we'll just do that. Close that down. Description. Let's just do allow indent. Let's change this from external IP addresses. Can't spell description. Okay. That's going to screw us up, isn't it? Do that. So from port, I know for this it's 3389. We'll set to port as well. We just want to allow a single port. Okay, so the from and the to are the same. IP protocol is TCP, and we got the 2 port already. So that's all we're going to add here for ingress. We'll tag it. Actually, we'll send, sorry, the VPC ID. And we're going to do exactly the same thing from here. We're going to use the import value again, which means we need VPC stack set, just like we did in the other one. Okay. And then tags. And we'll use our regular tags. The key is owner. We'll use the intrinsic function ref again. For those of you that watch this every week, you've probably memorized this little chunk of code by now. And then we'll go up here and we'll add these. And I usually set defaults for this. Environment. Actually, we should start doing this. I'm pretty sure I have dreams about this little chunk of code right here. Okay, so security group defined. Looks pretty good. I think we're fine. So the next thing we want is we need an EC2 instance for this. Any tips or tricks on the indentation of CloudFormation template? Does AWS documentation give you an idea of the indentation? Yeah, they actually do. Payment, it's a good question. So if you look in the documentation, as you're going through this, you can see kind of, everything's indented one from properties. Then it'll show you when it's a list versus a string. So often I look at this, but YAML also is pretty basic as far as the indentation rules go. So I would say get yourself a good YAML editor. I use PyCharm because we write a lot of Python code for customers. So I'm just used to Python. And then this is an extension called Rainbow Indent, I think it is. A couple of the other folks on the team, they use Microsoft Visual Code, right? It has the same extension. I find this handy because if you've got a large chunk of YAML, telling where things line up sometimes can be hard. So I just put this Rainbow Indent extension in, and it gives you this color coding. So yeah, have a look at the docs, and then the editor's usually pretty good at it too. Okay. So that's our security group. The next thing is we need an EC2 instance. Let's call this Bastion 0. Okay. I think it's just instance. We'll look it up. It would make sense that it's instance, right? There it is. Now there's a lot of options here. We're not going to do nearly any of them. Okay, we're going to do the absolute bare minimum just to get this machine up and running. Okay. Yeah, I need to learn the short keys for how much I use PyCharm, and I really like PyCharm as well, but I don't know a lot of the keyboard shortcuts. I need to spend more time doing that. It'd probably make it a little easier to use for sure. Okay, so like I mentioned, lots of stuff. We're going to keep it pretty basic. Looking through the list, I'm going to see if I can pick out what I want. All right, EBS optimized. Probably. Let's just put it in to form the habit. Okay. Instance profile. On a Bastion host, I normally wouldn't put an instance profile. Remember, an instance profile is the way that you associate a role in identity and access management, IAM, with an EC2 instance. So that's what it's doing. In this case, we're not going to do that. We're going to leave it without a role. I do need an image ID. This is the machine image, the AMI. Okay. Now, we could do something fancy like a mapping, but no, let's do a mapping to show you how it works. I don't know if we've talked about maps before in CloudFormation, but a map is really just a way to create key value pairs, and they can be used for any key value pair that you want to create that you're going to reference in a CloudFormation template. A lot of times, though, it's going to be used exactly how I'm going to use it, because remember, machine images, AMIs, are tied to specific regions. So we would generally write these templates in a way that you could take this template and run it across multiple regions in multiple AWS accounts. That's where a map would come into play. So let's just demonstrate it. I'm going to call this just Bastion AMI map. Okay. I have to look up the structure of it. Oh, and I forgot I need the mapping section. Yeah, so I need mappings first. That would help. You need to tell CloudFormation what it is that you're trying to do. Okay, and there's the logical name of the map. Okay, and then you can see it's just key value pairs, and we've got a really good example right here. So we're going to say CA Central 1. We'll just say Bastion, and then we'll go over here. We'll go to the EC2 service, and we'll just click launch. Oops, there we go. And I want this to be a Linux AMI, so I'm just going to grab this one right here. So that's the Amazon provided AMI. And if you wanted to use this across multiple regions, you would just do this, and you get the other AMI by going here. There is a different way to do this. Amazon actually provides all of the latest AMIs in parameter store. So you can make a programmatic call to specific keys in the parameter store, which will give you this information as well. So you could do that programmatically if you'd like. This is just a simple way to do it. Most times, you know, this is an Amazon AWS provided AMI. Most times what we actually end up doing with our customers is we would create our own custom AMI and then use that AMI to refer to what it is that we want to build. But today we'll just leave it like this. Okay. Now in here, I can use another intrinsic function called findInMap. Okay. It might actually be in this same example. No, it doesn't have one. There's findInMap. Well, they've kind of got an example here. Let's look at how the whole thing works, though. It's a basic function to use. So I'm using the shorthand, so findInMap. We need the name of the map, so this is the logical map that we created before. And I'm actually going to change this. We're just going to call this EC2 AMI map. Because then I could do something like this, right? And that could have a different AMI. So we're kind of generalizing it a little bit. So if we go down here, we're going to say EC2 AMI map is our first. Then our top level key, in this case, it's the region. So we're going to use a intrinsic function for this. And we're going to say, oh, is it? I think it's like that. Okay. And what this does is when we run this template, it'll substitute the AWS region value that we have here. Or sorry, it'll substitute that pseudo parameter with the actual region where we're running this. And then the last part is the actual reference. Okay. So this way, it's going to go to the map. It's going to look up the AMI that we want, or that we use for, in this case, the Bastion host in CA Central 1, and it's going to use that machine image. Okay. What else do we have here? Instance type is important. And we'll say reference instance type, and we'll set that as another value up here. Whoops, try that again. Maybe you want this. Can we run a T4G? Let's make sure we can do a T4G. We're in Virginia here. I think I want to be in Canada. I think the rest of this was deployed in Canada. Can we? Yeah, we can. Okay, so let's make the default a T4G medium. So this is, why is it grayed out actually? Oh, look, it's not available here. If we switch to US East, is it available? Oh, X. Okay, I'm not using the right architecture. We'll use a T3A for the time being. Keep it simple. Okay. So that's the default. That pulls in here. That's where we got there. We need a key because we do want SSH into this. So we'll say ref key name. And let's make sure we have a key already set up. If we don't, I'll download one. What do we got here? Oh, okay, CO demo, which we've used before. So we'll set that. Okay. We'll set that default because we won't really change that. We do need the security groups. Is there anything else? We need to provide it a subnet. Where do we want to put this? Okay, so let's start with the security group IDs. And remember that we've got the handy depends on attribute. In this case, we want to say the Bastion reference requires that the security group is done before. So that's really all we're doing that for. Okay. And actually, let's just double check what this is. It expects the IDs of the security group. So let's make sure that when we do the return value on here, if we do a ref, it gets the logical ID. So I think that's fine. Ref returns the resource ID for security groups created within a return. Yeah, I think we're okay with the ref. Whoops, don't want to go back. I just want to go up. So there's security group IDs. We also need the subnet ID. Whoops. And we'll do exactly the same thing that we did here. Okay. But we're not going to deploy it in a private subnet. We're going to put it in a public subnet because this is our Bastion host, so we want to be able to get at it. I think we already set the VPC stack there, so I think we're good. Let's check that VPC stack though. Yeah, public subnet 0, so we're fine there. Tags. We can take the tags from here. And we'll just add one. We're going to add a name tag. And we'll set the value dynamically by using another, oops, yeah, that's right. Another pseudo parameter, stack name. And let's just, what are we going to call this? If we think about what we've called these, let's just call it EC2 development maybe, or maybe a better name would be Bastion development, right? So we'll just leave it like that. We'll call it exactly what the stack is. I think that's it. We're not going to add user data. We're not going to add any volumes, anything like that. Let's try it. Okay, so we go back here. We'll add a new validation for EC2. Okay, and we'll deploy. We probably don't need to do this in sequence, but we'll do it just to keep it simple. Okay, so make this EC2 deploy, and we decided that we were going to call this Bastion. We don't need that, but we had a couple other things, didn't we? Okay, so that's got a default, that's got a default. The VPC stack we already have. These are all set. So maybe that's it. Okay. Parameter overrides, we can get rid of that. And we need to change this. Windows Bastion. And I didn't call that up here, did I? All right, so that is the template to deploy an EC2 instance that we will use as our Bastion host, and we're going to deploy it in that VPC in the public subnet. So let's see how, I keep doing that. They've got a new tab here. Added Windows Bastion. All right, push. And let's see how we did. Ah, how come I knew that's what was going to happen? What do we do wrong? Invalid template property. Oh, look. I misspelled allowed values. Let's close a couple of these down. That looks good. That one does not. If you've been here before, you know the drill. It probably won't be the only misspelling I have in the template. Yeah, there we go. Oh my God. Yeah, you should actually just read the whole word, right? If I can get this to validate, we'll go and we'll have a look at the directory service. It should be done by now. Ah. Oh, missed a colon there. Let's check the other ones. I have 2 colons there. I don't, okay. What I should do is figure out a way, a common string that I use for just making any commits to the repo where there's a spelling error, and then I could go back and I could write a little script to grab how many of the total, like 10th, well, what do we got here? 8,300 commits in this GitLab deployment. How many of those 8,300 commits are just to fix typos? I bet you it's a significant number. Okay, so that's good. Let's wait till this is green, then we'll go look at AD. Okay, so that's there, and we'll go back to CloudFormation again. Let's make that a star so it's up here. There's our bastion. We'll deploy this and go look at the directory service, and I'll just show you a couple things. So this is up and running now, okay? If we drill down, it will give us information about where it deployed this. So there's our VPC. There are the 2 subnets that we chose, okay? The DNS addresses for those 2 domain controllers. We don't have any trust relationships. We don't have any custom routing. You can see all the other configuration. We're going to come back and look at log forwarding here in a minute, but this is basically it. And remember, we talked about integration with other AWS services. You can go under here, and this is where you can enable the integration for various things. Like I'm really considering that we do a workspaces demo as well, where we set up a couple virtual workstations, virtual workspaces, so you can connect that to your directory service. Some other interesting ones like the management console login. Okay. A couple other things, but that's it, right? And again, this is why I like this service, because there's really not a whole lot to manage, okay, because it's a managed service. Let's go back and see how I did over here. Oh, what's that? Can't say that I'm really surprised. Look at security group ID. Is it supposed to be groups, I think, or IDs? It's probably supposed to be plural. Yeah, IDs. Okay, so delete this. We'll go fix up that problem. I want to make sure that that delete is done first. So push it again. If anybody has something they want to see, right? Like I've got a bunch of ideas and I've been kind of throwing them out as we're talking today. If anybody has any other ideas, things they'd like to see done in CloudFormation or Bodo scripting or something like that, throw them in the chat and we'll add them. I'm always looking for things to kind of walk through in a demo. I think, like I mentioned earlier, we'll go back next week and put CloudFront in front of our website, and then after that, I think the kind of the web-based workload, we've kind of walked through most of the steps, I think, to get you going. So we'll be looking for some other ideas. All right, so that's better. There's our Bastion host. If we go over to EC2, there's our Bastion host. Okay, still not actually alive yet, but you can see it's all set up. And there's something I forgot. How do we fix that? I would normally just put in a elastic IP, or sorry, a public IP address. The public IP address changes if you stop and start the machine. The other option that we have is an elastic IP. So you can see right here. What's different about an elastic IP is that it doesn't, like, let me say it this way. When I think about a public IP address in Amazon, I kind of think about it almost like a DHCP address. If I stop and start this Bastion host, its IP address would change. Nothing wrong with that other than the fact that you would need to know the IP address changed. An elastic IP is more like a static IP, right? You essentially allocate that IP address to your account. I could then move it between different AWS, EC2 instances, but the IP address itself doesn't change. Okay. Payment, let's see what we got here. Oh, Kevin, I'll come back to you in a second. If you change the default DHCP to your own DHCP setting and add your own on-prem DNS settings, does your manage Active Directory will pick these up? It would, but you would need to make some changes to that directory service, I think. Would it? Let me just reread that. So when you say you change the default DHCP, do you mean the DHCP option set that you would have in a VPC? I'm assuming that's what you mean, right? Like over here. You're talking about this right here, right? Yeah. So what you're saying is you create your own custom DHCP, and then within this DHCP, you put in your own DNS servers, and those DNS servers are on-prem. Does your manage Active Directory pick up those entries? You know, I'm not sure, Payman. I'm not sure. We'd have to try it to see how it works. I don't see why it wouldn't, right? Because the EC2 instance comes to life. It's still an EC2 instance. It's going to have DNS settings. We might be able to see that. Let's get into the EC2 instance and then we can have a look at it, okay? In my case, if we look at the subnets, or sorry, if we search, or sorry, filter, there we go, here, and we look at the public subnet, see what we normally do? We set up the VPC not to auto-assign public IP addresses, and I forgot about that. So that's why when that Bastion host came to life, it doesn't have a public IP, so I can't RDP to it, but we can fix that. What we're gonna do is we are gonna assign it an elastic IP address. Okay, so we're gonna define this elastic IP in our template. So let's go back over here. Okay, and we'll just call this Bastion EIP. And we'll put a 0 on it just because that's how I do it. EC2 EIP. So let's put the domain as VPC. The ID of the instance. Updates on an EIP reassociates the address. I normally don't do that here. We might come back to that one. Do we have our own IP addresses? No. And tags. So again, we'll do this exact thing. Let's just have a look again at the EC2 instance. I can't remember if you can do it on the instance side or not. Let's have a look before we decide how to do this. I don't, as I say it out loud, I don't think you can. I'm just looking like, does it have an elastic IP address? I don't think it does. There's our IPv6 addresses. Yeah, okay. So what we're going to do, we're going to go like this. Depends on Bastion 0. And if we go back and look, it wants instance ID. And I would assume that we can just do that, but let's check. So it's just the regular unique identifier for the instance. And let's go back here and see what the return values are for this. Yeah, so if we just do a ref, it comes back with that unique ID. Okay, so I think that's really all we need to do. And we should see a change come here. So here's a silly question. Can anybody, am I the only one that's listening to Pretzel right now? Can you hear music, or is it just me? Yeah, I don't think Twitch can hear it either. So let's do this then. Oh, I've been wearing these all day. It's kind of like taking off your ice skates. You're like, oh, that's good. Okay. All right, so we're creating our elastic IP address. That's done, and then we should see associated to our Bastion host. So if we just reload, jump over to EC2, we should now have an IP address, a public IP address. There's our IP. Okay, so let's do this. We're going to connect to this. We're going to do it through, what am I doing here? Do you know what I did? I wanted a Windows Bastion host. What did I deploy? I deployed an AWS Linux host. Okay, so that's a problem. Let's go over here. That is not going to work the way that we had hoped. The best part is I didn't catch that mistake until I went to try to connect to it, because I was expecting an RDP window there to grab the password. All right, let's try again. So central, remember, we can just change these. That's not what we wanted. Try that again. Okay, and then just to keep it consistent, we'll go over here and we'll look at this. I thought I drank a lot of coffee today. Obviously not. I love these little ads. Just trying to like upsell me as I look for an EC2 instance. Okay. That's the same. So, man, one of those nights tonight. It may be the same, but that would be very weird. Let's go over to Canada and check this again. It is the same, right? Okay. So this will be a good one, because what's going to happen in CloudFormation is we're going to see the change set come back and delete the EC2 instance, right? Because we obviously can't change an operating system from one to the other. Future stream idea is how to set up a pipeline. Yeah, the way that I have it with GitLab. Okay. A Lambda function. We were talking about a Lambda function as an option for tonight. And to be honest, I wanted to do a little more prep on my side before I did that. So that's another good example. How to look up documentation. Yeah, that would be a good one. You know, another idea that we were talking about tonight was just the idea of office hours, right? Like we'll basically just say, see here, Bastion 0 replacement is true. So it's going to create a new Bastion for us, hopefully running Windows this time, delete the old one. Okay. So we were also thinking about the idea of office hours. I don't know if we have a big enough community to warrant office hours at this point. Like I can see 2, 4, 6 or 7 people maybe watching right now. I would love to get the community big enough that we could just sit for an hour and answer questions. I don't know if it's quite there yet. So we were talking about it today. I've tabled that one as kind of an aspirational goal, that if we could get enough people watching that could allow questions to be asked for, you know, an hour or something like that, we would do it. But these are all good questions. So, or sorry, comments. Maybe a better way to say that is suggestions about future things. So thanks. I like the pipeline idea, and Lambda makes a lot of sense because, you know, we're working with Lambda all the time. And what we could do is show you how we build and deploy Lambda functions. We use something called the serverless framework to do that. So if you wanted to look that up, let me grab it for you. That's what we use. Payman, you know this name, Deborsky. So for those of you who don't know some of these names, Payman, Deborsky, and I worked together for a while, probably about 4 or 5 years. And Payman, Deborsky was pretty relentless about the serverless framework. And I kind of kept saying, oh yeah, whatever, we'll get to it. And he didn't let me kind of ignore it. And I finally broke down one day, and we sat for about a week and worked through it. And yeah, he's right. It's a really, really great framework to help you build out solutions. Yeah, not anymore, right? But we had a good run. Okay, so there's our new Bastion, and you can see it's deleting the old one. So if we go back here, go to EC2. All right, let's highlight this. It's got the same IP address. That's what I was expecting to see. We can get the password. All right, so I'm gonna do this. Give me a second. Note to self, you need audio on the just chatting page. Still learning, still learning. Let's see if we can actually fix that right now. Give me a sec. Can you hear me now? Testing audio on the just chatting window, because audio is good for just chatting. Hey, so I was saying that I don't think my camera is really, it doesn't look very crisp, does it? In full size like this, it's kind of, it doesn't look quite right to me. It looks a little soft. Let me try something. Who knew there'd be all this technology to think about? All right. So let's go back over here. And I have the password. So what we're going to do is we're going to go set up remote desktop, clear out this one, and create a new one. And we'll grab the IP here. We'll call this Windows Bastion Demo, and we'll make sure that I don't take over my whole screen for this. All right. We want to use the local administrator the first time through. And really, I don't care if you see this password because it's not going to last very long. Where did my RDP window go? Oh, there it is. And it's alive. Okay. So that's the first leg. We still can't talk to the directory service at this point. There is something else I want to show you about the directory service that's really important. And it's in the documentation, but it's easy to forget. So I want to go over to security groups. And what you'll see here is a security group that matches the directory service that we talked about before. Okay. And you'll notice that this is a security group that's created by Amazon when you deploy this. And these probably aren't the right rules, right? Just basically allowing inbound traffic from anywhere. What we would normally do with this, and it obviously depends on what you're trying to do, but in our case, I'm going to take this and we're going to modify these. Now this is created for us, so it's not something that I'm aware of you can do in CloudFormation. I don't think you can. So we're just going to get rid of all the 0 ranges and change it to the range. Basically anything in the VPC can talk to the directory service. You know, if we were setting this up for a customer, we would do something like this, but we might also have a range on-prem or a range from another VPC that we want to talk to this. So the main takeaway here is not to leave it open like this. Oops. Did I miss that one, I think? Okay. You could create a little script for this too, because you could programmatically look up the security group, because you know the name, and then it's always appended with, I think, underscore controllers, and then you could just save them. Okay, so you could create a little script. Okay, so those are inbound rules. Outbound is basically all traffic into the domain controllers themselves. Let's look that up. Okay, so we've done that already. Similarly, you might choose to restrict destination addresses to which your controllers can communicate. Make sure changes only if you understand. Yeah, I think we don't have to mess around with that outbound one. Okay. I need some notifications set up here. Okay, sorry, getting sidetracked. Okay, so we've got that. So change that guy. And we need another Windows machine, because right now that EC2 instance that we set up is really the entry point, right? And it can't communicate to our, it's not in the private subnet. And I don't really want a public instance to be part of the domain. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to extend this. We're going to create another security group. We'll call this 1. Allow inbound from, okay. And in this case, we'll say 1098. Allow inbound RDP from VPC IP addresses. Okay, we can leave the rest of this the same. That's easy. And then what we're going to do is we'll create another, we don't need an EIP, sorry, we just need another one of these. Too many entries, too many lines. Let's try that again. Okay, so this will be, we'll just call this, I don't know, AD admin 0. Okay. It depends on security group 1. The rest of this can all stay the same. We want to put this in, we'll put this in private subnet 0. And we are going to tag a name on, oh, you know what? This isn't going to look right because we called the stack Windows Bastion. So we probably should have just called it like Windows EC2, and then we could have tagged one as Bastion, one as AD. So the name's not going to be great, but you'll get the idea. Ah. Okay. Push that. Yeah, see how I called it Bastion? Not a good choice for that. I guess in theory I could create multiple templates for this, but in a little demo like this, does it make sense to make multiple templates? Probably not. Maybe a little too much separation. Okay. There's our EC2 instance. There's our security group. Yeah, I changed the security group. Okay. Usually if it doesn't fail immediately on that EC2 deployment, it should work. I'd be interested to see if we go back over here and we go to launch. If we go down to 2016 base, I have to look up what the Graviton stuff is. Again, I guess it's probably the architecture, right, that we're selecting. Okay, so there's our Bastion, there's our admin. Not necessarily a great setup, but for today it'll work. Well, I think we'll probably come back and do another session on this. We've been at it for about an hour and a half. So what I'll do here is probably RDP to the Bastion and then jump from the Bastion to the actual admin user or the admin instance. And then we'll just show adding that admin instance to that domain. And then we'll call it a day there. Okay. I'm going to do the same thing because I've got to open up that private key. So let me just jump back over here and let's see if this will connect. Oh, it's not quite ready yet. We'll give it a second. Great that we can deploy all this stuff, but when you're waiting for it. Okay, it looks like it's gonna work, so give me a sec. Go back there. Okay, we got another giant password to deal with, which I'll throw in here just so we have it. All right. So we've got the admin password for this guy now. Let's go back over to RDP, and then we can simply go like this. We'll get the IP address. Again, it's local administrator. And like I did before, just see if we can cut and paste this. I don't think it's going to let me. Oh, it did. Okay. All right. So we're going to connect. Now we're on that machine in the private subnet. And when this comes to life, what we'll do is I think we'll add it to the domain so you can see that work. Then we know we've got that domain up and running correctly. Okay. One of the first things that we need to do is we need to modify the network, because right now, Payman, remember you were asking about directory services, or sorry, DNS. This would be pointing at the Amazon provided DNS. We need to change that, and we want to point it at the DNS for the Active Directory service. So in this case, I always forget how to do this. Yeah, we can go in here. I think we can click this, can't we? Yeah, there we go. And what we're going to do is we're just going to go in and we're going to change the properties of this. And we're going to find here, and we're going to use the DNS addresses that we got when we created the directory service. So we can go over here and just grab these two addresses. Oh, is it not going to let me paste? Oh, there we go. Come on. Okay, so that's step one. Let's make sure whatever this is, remote FX, GPU dismantle. Okay, that's something on the setup. So what we're going to try to do now is just go over here. We're going to change. We're going to put this into AWS local. Okay. In this case, it's going to be aws.local/admin. And this password is what we set in the parameter store a while back. So let's go over there and we'll go to Systems Manager. I always forget where it is. Go to parameter store. Click. and just grab our password. There we go. So let's restart this. And we'll just make sure that when we log in, we can log in as, we'll use just the domain admin, the built-in administrator that we created. We'll do that just to make sure that it works okay. And then we'll call it a day. So we'll just give it a second to reboot. Okay, so we're gonna say, I use a different account. So AWS local /admin, and we should be able to just paste the same thing. And there we go. So we've just logged in as the domain admin on this machine. So this machine is the first computer in our new AWS local Windows directory. Okay. And once it loads up, we can confirm that. So we just go back over here. There we go. We're in AWS local. Okay. So I think that's as far as I'm going to take it today. Yeah, pretty cool, eh? And it's not really super hard stuff. There's some other things that we can do next week. So we'll finish up some other configuration on the domain, turning on the log group integration. So that way it's pushing security events into CloudWatch logs so we can see it there. We'll also set this up a little further where we get, what was I going to say? We could, manage the domain. So we've got to install like some tools on this particular on this particular EC2 instance to manage the domain, where we can go in and add other users and things like that. Okay. So I'll come up with some other things. We may do one more session on this if everybody's interested in it. And then maybe we'll flip back at that point and finish up the web-based workload. So maybe we'll stick with this next Tuesday as well. Okay. So folks, as always, thank you very much for joining me today. I really appreciate it. It means a lot to have some folks here hanging out with me and learning about CloudFormation and learning about AWS. So a reminder for those of you, Tuesdays is AWS, I would say almost exclusively CloudFormation in some form or another. Thursdays we play Minecraft. We might change it up a little bit and try something called Vintage Story this Thursday. Same time, 7 o'clock Eastern. So if you want to kind of hang out and just watch me probably very quickly die in a survival-like Minecraft game, I'll see you on Thursday. Otherwise, enjoy your weeks. Stay safe out there, and we'll be back on Tuesday with more CloudFormation. Take care, everybody. Payman, you're welcome. Thanks, man. I appreciate it. Kevin, as always, thanks for hanging out, man. We'll talk later, okay? Take care, everybody.